Hello and welcome to Live Genre Chronicles. It's one of them. Their podcasts about video games, specifically about Japanese RPGs. And this week will be, or this week, holy shit! We're not doing weekly. This month,
God.
this every other month. This episode will be discussing Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon. I'm your host, ostensibly, Val. My call sign is obviously Gamer.
I'm Becky. I couldn't solve the Rubik's Con.
I'm Leroy, and I won't miss.
There we go. So,
Well,
yeah, this is going to be a fun one. We're all kind of all over the place, but Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon just came out like 2 months ago, and we decided to tackle it right as it came out because it would give us a chance to talk about From Software and difficulty, and also just like it seemed like a good time. Becky didn't finish it, unfortunately.
I super didn't finish it. This is the worst playing a video game has made me feel, despite kind of liking the game, since Kingdom Hearts. And there came a point where I had to stop playing Kingdom Hearts because it was ruining me. I had the same problem with this game. And it wasn't even just that I was playing the game and getting stressed out. I would stop playing the game, and then I would go on Twitter or co-host or places and see people talking about enjoying the game, and it would make my mood worse. And that was really the thing where I was like, this is not good for me, actually. This sucks.
Yeah. I'm like,
I have
I've
some
had
thoughts
that-
about...
I respect stepping back because I would have just kept getting mad, you know?
I mean, you wouldn't need to because you're actually good at this shit. Whereas...
Like, kind of.
Listen, I have fucking talked about this. It's not a matter of us being good, we're just stubborn. Like, both me
I
and
think
Leroy
stupid qualifies for this one.
Yeah, just like...
There are some times I was done playing and my body hurt. Man, why the fuck am I playing this? But
yeah, like, it literally isn't like we have a higher skill level, we just have more energy to throw ourselves at this wall, and no matter what else it does to us, because we get some catharsis out of it.
I mean, there are also differences in learning styles, like genuinely.
I know, but you can't just say, well, you're good at video games, so you enjoy this. That's not, like, that is fundamentally not true. I have just been stubborn for longer than you have.
Well, yeah, I'm being facetious, but
I know, but like, also, you haven't been facetious when you said this in the past, and
I mean,
I'm
but
grilling you for it.
that is what good at video games mean. Right? It just mean you have the time and the inclination to just keep.
Yeah, but it's really flattening it out to, oh, you're good at video games, I'm not, end of story. Is just like, it's practice that you haven't put in, and patience you don't have. There's a difference. We're going to talk about difficulties this time, everyone. Hi, I'm the one who was like, oh yes, I'm the freak this game was made for. I get immense catharsis out of beating the shit out of bosses.
Suddenly activated something in you, even relative to seeing you play other FromSoft games. It's like this one brought it to another level.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I
was pulled at two sides because I love the Sonic Adventure 2 battle. That's my touch point. I love the Sonic Adventure 2 battle. You know, vibes the game has. So there's a lot of hype moments. But man, some of the bosses straight up made me feel miserable. I was feeling the strain because I guess if I had more time to take breaks, maybe I could have had a smoother experience. But you know, each time I was done playing, you know, hands hurt, and that kind of I felt I was getting too much. I was in the game too much.
Yeah.
I was dying in real life.
Yeah, it would help if you didn't try to jam it in the last 2 weeks of the podcast recording or playing period.
I didn't know the game structure either, though, to be fair. I had a bad estimate because I thought I just had to play a new game. Well, I guess I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, I think...
you both did do the full 3 playthroughs.
Yeah.
Whereas I didn't clear chapter 4 in my first playthrough.
Yeah. So
Um,
the thing about this game is that like I compared it to Drakengard, and specifically not Nier, because with Nier it's just like the same stuff again, but like you get an extra bit of you get an extra few asides that like here's some stuff that was going on in the background that you weren't privileged to see in your first time through. And in Drakengard, it just like you go through the game once, you collect a few like companions, and then some shit happens, and then alternate paths open up where it's like, okay, we're going to go back to before you met this person and what would happen if they were with you during this earlier plot event, and give you some information, and some other shit happened, and you branch off in a completely nonsensical direction from like a strictly linear plot point
mm.
perspective. And
Yeah,
like,
because a lot of like the early things in this that you can do differently, if I understood what you were saying about them correctly, because I've not done them myself, is like you meet characters that later on you have bigger beef with, and you can take out the beef on them early, right? You can like
yeah.
attack Iguazu early and stuff.
hmm Uh, and doing so puts you on a path where you're more friendly to the resistance. So you get a couple more missions and involved with them in other missions down the line. But ultimately it
Mm.
doesn't amount to a whole lot in the original in New Game Plus, which is where that happens. It's really like New Game Plus Plus, where you start out from the outset with like you have this friendly ID on your person in your mech, so you're asked to defend Strider, the mobile weapons platform, and
Mm.
everything goes to hell because it's already blowing up when you get there.
Yes, I have seen that bit.
Um,
Uh,
and uh, I feel like spoilers for this game is not really like super spoiler heavy. Like I don't think being spoiled on a lot of things would like change how I feel about uh most of this, because
I mean, the storytelling experience is a weird one anyway,
hmm,
because like it wants to have a big cinematic story, but it also wants to do most of its storytelling through like mission briefings and debriefings,
yeah.
which is such an old-fashioned way of doing it for a video game.
Yeah, a little bit.
Um, it has a this is something, and it's one of those things where it's like I want to draw attention to it and talk about it as a like a game design thing, but also like I've not quite found the framework I want to talk about it from. That like the the ways that it is not worldy in since the advent of the hub level, and since like first off everything was built around a hub level, and then everything started to go open world in AAA games.
Hmm.
It's really weird to play a game that looks like a AAA game in terms of like budget and flash and stuff, but is literally just mission, 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 mission. Um,
No, this is just my own taste, but I was glad there wasn't like an open world shitbox in this one. I was pleasantly surprised because I actually expected it to go in that direction without like really knowing about the game.
yeah,
It
it's more like it's more that it felt weird to me because it's so unfamiliar now.
it is you feel a little bit displaced or estranged, I think, because
Yeah.
the last games I played like this, last game I played this was like probably Bayonetta, like, and I don't, and like that was like I don't know 10 years ago.
Mm. Yeah. And I mean, it has this effect because like this game cares about the world, right? It cares about Rubicon, and they put a lot of effort into making some really cool locations and like places where you see aspects of Rubicon that look cool. Like there's all the like superstructure in the sky and stuff. But it's not at all an exploration game. There are little touches here and there, like sometimes you can find a chest in the middle of a mission that's optional stuff, or like a mech to scan. Um, but everything, because we're so used to like basically the Breath of the Wild paradigm for exploration now, all the exploration felt kind of half baked, even though it's really just older fashioned. It's like, oh yeah, you're in a level. There's an optional secret thing that you can pick up.
Yeah, that's the
I
thing.
do,
Like,
I
as
do think the game would be better served without the exploration stuff. Actually, if it was just sculpture to sculpture to sculpture, that's that's kind of what the old Armored Core games feel like. If this one was trying to like make sure there's some achievements to get, that's the feeling I got. I liked finding the data logs, but I actually think some of them should have been in story too, because there's actually like pretty big deal revelations that you just have to like go around and find. Oh, okay.
yeah,
And you
my
can. Sorry, go on.
I'm just like, there's no. It shouldn't feel open world because you're literally always on a mission. Like you're never you're literally on a leash. You have a handler. Like the little bits of like exploration you have are always like pretty tightly boxed in because they wanted to do like they wanted to do some visual fidelity to the world, and it's a very pretty looking place, but also like if they scoped that too big, it would have been a fucking nightmare guaranteed.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm like, I guess because the other kind of big flashy mech game that comes to mind for me is like Xenoblade X. Is the
That
only thing
is
that's actually like an open world game with mechs. Um,
Yeah, and they did that
and
once and then it died. So like
yeah, and like that game is overwhelming. Even if, like, even with all everything that's good about it, it's so big and there's so much to do.
mhm.
Um, and they had to like hard gate it so hard with like progression of what your mechs can do. Um,
I mean, that's not necessarily true. Like
there are
flight
some hard. There are some hard gates.
there
I
are
tested pretty
there
hard.
there are some hard gates, but you can get into a lot of places on foot, let alone in a mech.
Mm.
Like
Um,
that is one of the most daunting points about that game is you can walk all over the world.
I
It'll
did.
take you fucking forever, but
Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah.
though I think like the empathy for Rubicon is sort of contrasted with the depersonalization of 61, the dispossession. Like
Mm,
61 is a non-person, so
yeah.
like
mhm.
that's the framework you're playing from. So I kind of even it kind of makes sense to me that you can't have that kind of like very deep relationship with this planet because you're just like you're also part of the invasive force. There's that kind of complicity in games going.
Even though you get part of the planet in your head in like
Right,
the
even though you,
mission.
you you get part of the planet in your head.
um,
And
which like
yeah,
we'll talk about that
like
too.
Carla sarcastically calling you tourist isn't wrong. Like you're not supposed to be here, even if you do get handed air, and she gets
Mm,
like to influence you and be part of your decision making process.
yeah. I think the other thing kind of level structure wise where it's this, you know, it's this hybridization thing that really I think is what itched at me, and it's the whole business of like how checkpointing works and the fact that you can completely respec at a checkpoint but you can't buy new gear,
I genuinely
which
think that's just like there was some issue with altering your money amount in the middle of a mission, fucking with some sort of save property that they didn't want to mess
yeah, I
with.
mean, I'm sure that's true, but also the fact that you can respec at checkpoints at all,
I mean, you can only respec from death. Like,
and that you can only respec from death. Like you can't respec when you summon the thing. It's like the fact that you can respec is very video gamey,
mhm.
but the fact that it's framed as if you're still in the mission
I mean, it's
is
not
less
though.
so, and you
Like,
can't go to the shop. Like,
It was jarring for me too, but that's because I was playing for one, which does not let you do that.
yeah,
You're just dead.
yeah, no.
mm,
Like, I think that is being extremely picky about a concession to like people just wanting to beat the level and going, okay, let me change out my strategy without having to do the entire mission over, which I appreciate.
I'm just all I'm
there,
saying is it felt weird, right? It
yeah,
felt
there
weird
are
for
a
me.
lot of concessions. Honestly, like right from the beginning, I felt weird about the game because this is the first mech game I've played where you feel like you are a robot person. Does that make sense? Like I felt very connected to the movements of the character rather than, and a lot of other mech games, you feel like you are operating a machine. And they're kind of cutting away these barriers I traditionally associate with mecha games to make it like very playable. I would say like aggressively playable,
I mean, yeah,
which is also funny because the game's extremely hard.
yeah, but also that's kind of the point that they're driving at with like the Rubicon Institute and like All Mind's entire deal too. So that's apt, I guess, given the themes and plot of the game. And
Yeah, they I don't know if it was intentional or not, but they do sort of tie it into this kind of pairing with your mech, right? It's just kind of like suggesting a singularity through the game or something.
I
mhm.
mean, there is absolutely nothing in the game to give you any sense of like embodiment or proprioception that isn't through the mech.
Yeah, that's
Like
true.
you never see 621.
You also
You
never
never,
see anyone else.
yeah,
Humans don't
uh,
exist. Their mechs do.
yeah. Um, I actually like. I don't. For me, and another thing that like put a barrier between me and the game was I don't like how the mechs move. Like I didn't really feel that sense of connection to the mechs either. It's just they were the only thing to latch onto. Um,
I see. Yeah, maybe my reading is more comparative because I'm used to these. I'm used to the mech games being really, really janky, and
that's true.
this felt like a bridge between like it's still unconventional. It's still a bit weird.
Mm.
It still took me a long time to like unlearn my land legs. Basically, like I was still playing on the most of the game, but
Yeah, you. It very much assumes that you are gonna like be in the air a lot, be moving around in the air a lot. Um,
yeah, I did have to totally like rethink how I was playing the game. But a lot of the rhythms, at least, a lot of the stuff felt familiar to me as someone who has played other games. You know, other 3 action games.
mm,
Where I think other mech games really do not feel similar or familiar. They really kind of feel like their own thing. This one's trying to bridge that gap, in my opinion.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
I'd agree with that. It's just like my issue is more superficial than that. The thing like when I say my issue, it's not like I think they did a wrong thing. They did a thing that didn't work for me, which is like, and it's most noticeable when I watch like videos of other people playing the game. Is that your mech sort of floats in the middle of the screen, and it doesn't really it feels like the world is whirling around you when you move around, but it doesn't show up in like how the mech's body and limbs move around.
It's like
The
frictionless
frame,
almost.
yeah, the frame is very rigid on the screen. Um, Whereas if you watch mecha anime, you will see the mech like move. When a mech is flying around in an anime, it flies around like Superman flies. With like a hand out above its head, or the posture of the mech changes depending on exactly what it's doing. Um, and AC6 really doesn't have that at all. Um, and it's especially noticeable, and this is just pure pet peeve, but it's especially noticeable with the tank track mechs. It actually just made me itch watching them fly around. It's like, you're a tank. You should be driving. Stay on the fucking ground. Which is not, that's not the gameplay paradigm, and that's fine. It just, it wasn't right for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess that is another way I could describe it. I think a lot of other mech games feel like you're operating vehicles or construction grade machinery or something like that. And this game is very smooth. Very
mm,
I think there's a lot of attention to detail on like how much small movement, like there's a lot of degrees of movement you can do in the game. There's like really
mm.
fine analog control, and I also think that was actually initially weird. Like I had too much control over this thing that is like huge and wouldn't have wouldn't have that kind of fine control, but this game it
Mm.
does.
Yeah, and like clearly for the people it worked for, it worked fine. Like you both had great experiences once you got on top of it. Of like, it's cathartic, it's connected, it's a polished action game. Um, I guess like part of it is I went to this game with fairly strong preconceived ideas of what mecha stories are about. I write mecha fiction myself and watched a lot of mecha anime. And Armored Core, you know, Tara will probably bonk me for saying this. Armored Core is very different to most of the mecha stories that I know.
Yeah, it's probably it's
like
see,
in
I'm
terms.
coming at this from like my main mecha experience being like Code Geass and Muv-Luv,
Yeah.
which are both like skewing towards the quote real mech side of things. And fucking people outside my window. I swear to fucking God. Anyway, um yeah, like there are there are definitely different genre conventions depending on how you hew on the spectrum of like there's supernatural or like vibes based shit going on with this, and here is something that we could probably build a rough approximation of functionally with the tech we have now.
Yeah.
And like this skews towards the latter pretty hard. And like yes, there's sci-fi shit going on and the coral is sentient and also oil and also in your head, but like it really feels like it's going for like the more quote unquote hard sci-fi side of the mech genre, which is
Or at
what
least
yeah.
It reminds me of Vodoms, maybe. That's the only mech I can think of that has like the really strong like military sci-fi bent to it.
Mm-hmm.
But Armored Core is like so invested in its cyberpunk setting too that it's not. It loves playing with like the the symbols and the hype moments and the semiotics of other mecha stories, but it's like fundamentally not telling a story like that.
yeah, for sure. And it's also like there are, with the exception of a few missions, it's really not thinking about like the physical space, the environment very much. Like there are environments and they're spectacular, but this goes back to the point about exploration as well. Most of the time, it's all build-ups to you fight a duel with another mech, or like the units you're with fight other units of equivalent kind of category, rather than it's about being in these machines and having to negotiate kind of the quote unquote like ordinary war environments, if you like. There's a couple of city type spaces at the start. But the environmental aspects of the game just gets less and less.
Yeah, it's very decentralized and filled with the gaps. You don't really get a sense of like an overarching place. Rather, you just have like venues.
That is honestly extremely funny to me, specifically because like there are several missions that essentially reuse the same geometry but flip you around perspective wise to give you a different vibe for the mission you're doing. Like if you go attack the watch point, fight Baltius, that bridge approach to the watch point, you flip it around, and now you're defending the watch point, so Carla can fire missiles, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, this is efficient reuse of space.
Yeah.
There's two or three missions on the wall too, right? Like I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like because there's the stealth mission as well as the like main assault and stuff.
There's the main assault. There's the stealth one too. I feel like there's at least one more, but I forget.
Same. I can't remember what it is.
I think there's
I
like
think you
a
also fight some
recover
duels
logs
in that arena. Some of the like arenas are set in that space.
Oh no,
but...
I remember what it is. It's one of the decision missions. You instead of fighting Cataphract, you can go fight LCs and HC in like the approach to the wall. And it's
okay.
I was thinking about that.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's very video gamey in a lot of funny ways. Like,
Yeah.
and it's it's very interesting to come to this uh video game not having played Sekiro, which is another game that's like really kind of hard action and has a lot of the same action design apparently. One of our friends I've been in chatting with about Armored Core and they were like, "Yeah, this is giving me some Sekiro vibes." And I'm like, "Yeah, I should
Mm.
probably play that game." I don't have anything concrete to say about Sekiro, but
Yeah.
it's
I feel like
it's
that's another one that you'll probably go sickos mode on, to be honest,
yeah, and
like, from what I
like
know of it.
that's the thing. As much as this is a mech game, it's also a FromSoft game, which
Mm.
is they. So it's the first Armored Core game in a decade,
Mm.
and it's the first one since like Dark Souls really got big, and they've been doing Dark Souls 2, 3, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, Sekiro. It's just like there's been some difficulty creep for sure. Like
Yeah.
there are definitely some hard missions in Armored Core 4 Answer and Armored Core 5, but like probably none of them are the same kind of difficult as trying to fight air or snail. Fuck that guy.
I called this game a new type simulator.
God.
I
God.
I've had to do feats in this game that I didn't find particularly fun, if I'm being honest. It's stuff I've never had to do in a game before because I play a lot of shooters. I even play them on console. I'll admit to this. I was playing Battlefield Bad Company a couple weeks ago. I have bad taste. But
But
I never play these games on hard mode because it isn't fun. And then this is a game that makes you track like it'll track to a degree like I've never had to do in a shooter before. Like there's just the fight against All Mind. There's just so much shit on the screen, and I was losing track of them all the time, especially in the second phase.
Mm.
I don't even know what to say. It was ridiculous. It was one of the hardest things
Yeah.
I've ever done in a game.
Yeah, for
I
me
don't
as somebody who always struggles with, like, when there's lots of visual effects on screen, it was just illegible so often.
yeah,
Um,
unfortunately,
They
I can't say anything except I just got good because I have a specific kind of ability to hyperfixate and keep spatial awareness of enemies. So I was
yeah.
just like, I'm going to focus on the primary big bad and ignore the other things because
Mm.
I can. And that's not a thing that I can just say to anyone.
Yeah. So like it's probably worth mentioning that the actual boss that I gave up on was Ibis at the end of chapter 4,
Hmm.
who specifically is a boss who has like drones as part of their like kit and often will send a cloud of drones out to attack you while they're moving around, and the drones will fire a bunch of lasers in various different ways, and the boss will fire lasers and there'll be explosions from the lasers, and um it's just it's visually busy in a way that I can't cope with.
Yeah, I
Um,
unfortunately the thing about this game in particular is that it forced me to remind myself how to open my third eye and find the tempo for all the fights, and I wasn't looking for windows like fired. Like when they came out there was a beat and then they would like fire and I would just know whether I had them on screen or not, whether they would be
mm,
firing at me, and I just needed to dodge to the beat.
yeah.
And like at some point you need to use more than just your visual senses to
Mm.
play an action game.
Well, I think also like it's just way fast. So like I've played Elden Ring and I've played some Demon Souls and arguably Dark Souls 1. I played it with a mod that had guns in, which, you know, trivialized it. Didn't trivialize everything, trivialized a lot of it. Um, but it is it feels to me like the combat in this is so much faster than any of those games. Like even in like Dark Souls, there's a back and forth that is a bit like turn taking. You
Hmm.
know, like enemies stop for a moment now and then, and whereas in AC6, it does, even when you stun an enemy, it doesn't really feel like they stop for more than a fraction of a second.
I mean, it
Um,
really depends on the enemy that you,
it does depend on the enemy.
because some of them will just go like get stun locked for like 5 seconds. You're just like,
Yeah,
I'm beating up a small innocent animal right now. This does not
yeah.
make me feel joy. And then sometimes
I
you stagger someone and they flinch out of it and immediately fly backwards and go like, okay, I'm out of
yeah.
that. Bye.
I guess that's also because like the thing with Armored Core, the famous thing with Armored Core is that every bit of your mech's behavior is conditioned by a stat which you can change by equipping different stuff.
Hmm.
And we know from people who've done the like decompiling work that you know, all the enemy mechs have that system as
Hmm.
well, and they like often they are built out of the same parts that your mechs are, and you know, some of them have some custom parts, but like a lot of it is the same stuff. And that means that they can also just have those variable responses, because you can build your mech to have a quicker recover from stun if you want, if you're prepared to make those trade-offs,
Hmm.
or higher stun resist or whatever. Um, and you know, the thing everybody said going into AC6, like the thing that like experienced Armored Core players were saying going into this game was, you got to change your build. You got to change your build for everything. Every time you get stuck, change your build. Which I think was probably overstated overall. Like
Yeah,
a
generally
lot of
like,
videos I've watched of people doing like their let's play of this, they're not really changing their build.
yeah, no,
Not very often.
it's the thing is like you need to be willing to change your build if
Mm,
you're not able to cope with the situation you're in. Like,
mm,
I found a build that works for me. It was reverse joint midweight, and I just kind of jumped all over the place, being a little fucking weirdo, and kicking
yeah.
people in the face, and that worked for
Yeah.
me. But that wouldn't work for Becky. I don't know
No,
if it
not
would
at all.
work for Leroy.
Mm.
I
I mean,
I made small changes all the time, but I wouldn't really
Mm.
classify that as changing my build either. I
Yeah.
would like sort of just like add a spoiler here or change a stat here,
Yeah.
but I focused on just like midweight bipedals
Mhm.
with guns and explosives the whole game.
Yeah,
Mm.
like,
I found a couple of builds that I got comfortable with, but it's also like a thing I definitely never mastered was, you know, if I'm struggling in a fight for some reason, being aware that literally anything that I could be struggling with, I could change my build on. Like, yeah, I can change my weapons, and I could kind of figure out sometimes I need this kind of weapon for this fight for this reason. Like on Baltius, for example, I went for the plasma bubble gun thing because it's really good against shields. Because one of the big problems in that fight is he has a shield.
mhm.
Like I could do that, but when it came to thinking about, oh, do I want to have quicker stagger recovery? Do I want to be able to fly more? You know, what those kinds of like how the mech moves things. I was really bad at identifying where I was having a problem in one of those areas, and then dealing with it accordingly.
Yeah, the thing that I didn't pay attention to all my stats. I have essentially paid attention to, can I keep my quick boost, reload, recharge, whatever, under like 0.7 seconds? Like down at like 0.6 would be perfect because that's usually good enough to like chain dodge shit. And how do I max out armor points while doing that and having a decent amount of dodges? And like I just literally focused on, how do I maximize armor while keeping my keeping my Dark Souls medium roll active? Like,
Mm.
that is genuinely all I focused on, and I ended up with the build I got once I accounted for weapons and stuff.
Yeah,
I didn't
dull.
even know there was a boost delay.
Yeah,
I just
there's a stat depending on how heavy you are that governs how fast you can quick boost.
Yeah, dull.
I kind of got stressed out by like sunk cost. Like you have this kind of impression that the things even though you could sell everything, you have this impression that this kind of sunk cost thing, like, oh, did I pick the wrong things? Am I stuck now? Like I got feeling that way a few times in the.
I never
yeah.
had that issue at all because, yeah.
Well, I think like so. One of the things that AC has a reputation for as a series is you actually can get into a sunk cost situation of like you bought one set of gear and it's the wrong set of gear and you can't afford to change because the game's going badly because you have the wrong set of gear. But they took that out in this because everything is fully refundable and you can use the store as a bank.
Mhm.
I want to quickly like Dol said in chat that the Lancer sourcebook, the TRPG, the Mecha TRPG, and I so badly want to play in a Mecha TRPG campaign, but I so badly do not want to have to deal with like mech stats and builds as a TRPG thing, because even the full data screen in AC6, where you can look at every stat and see the effect on every stat of every component, even that was overwhelming to me. Like I tried so hard to use that and to adjust things accordingly, and my brain would just glaze over after
Yeah,
5 minutes
like
of tinkering
I'm
every
laughing because
time.
I didn't even try. I looked at the attack power of stuff and that's it. For a
Yeah,
while, I was
no.
Told me
just.
I had to, and that I would be better
No.
at the game if I
For a
did.
while, I'm not saying you did it wrong or anything. For a while, I was just taking only bazookas. I'm like, well, that was the biggest number. And then I was like, wait, this isn't working. Rethink what I
Yeah,
do.
my tactic was like get a general gist of whether I want these numbers to be high or low, and then leave it alone until I needed to change outfit. Like you don't have to
Yeah.
comprehend all systems all at once all the time forever. You just need
I
to get a
actually,
gist.
I will be honest. I still don't comprehend because I just didn't. I didn't look up anything and I didn't bother. I would just like be like, this has good armor. It looks kind of cool. I like this weapon. The idea of this weapon from other games, and then roll with it. I unfortunately my stupidity like prevailed there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you say that, but you completed the game and I didn't.
Oi, asshole. We've talked about this.
um,
That's the
like
stupidity at work.
so I'm actually like I'm gonna use this as a springboard to a whole thing that I want to talk about, because this actually goes to something which I think will be useful as we move towards talking about like difficulty in general, like a background thing. And this is the bit where I was joking about doing the entire like intellectual history of the Western world. So I'm going to zoom right out for a bit. Bear with me. One way to tell that history, especially in like the modern period, the last 400 years, is to say there's a thing called rationalism and there's a thing called empiricism. And rationalism is like principally associated, like traditionally, as I was taught, it is associated with like Descartes, Leibniz, and Spinoza, and then empiricism is associated with Locke, Berkeley, and Hume. And there's all sorts of politics around that, but basically, empiricism is you look at the world, it does a thing, you interact with that thing, you change what you're doing to adjust to the world. And rationalism is you're trying to figure things out from first principles. So you don't look at the thing first, you try to work out what it's going to do, and then you do something and the thing does a thing. So one kind of pro-rationalist way of putting this would be to say that rationalism is proactive, whereas empiricism is reactive. It's a very reductive way of doing it, but I'm trying to sketch this as quickly as I can. Something that happened in game studies that the academic discipline that kind of formalized itself emerged over the first decade of this century or so. One of the things that group of academics really emphasized, and lots of people on different sides of the key debates all seem to share this view, is the idea that games are about empiricism, right? You have a piece of software and it does stuff, and you look at what it does and you adjust what you're doing accordingly to it.
Is
And
this similar to like that, like speculation or whatever? Sorry, I interrupted you.
yeah, so like Cameron Kunzelman of Game Studies and various other kind of things has been pushing this in terms of speculation lately in his book The World is Bored from Zero, which I haven't read, but I listened to the podcast and he talks about it on there. And you could call it that. I'm a little puzzled why he chose the word speculation, but he's from a different intellectual tradition to me, so there might be other reasons for it. But like, you know, you see this in Espen Ersat and Janet Murray. So it's like both sides of the narratology ludology debate are saying, yeah, there's under all of this, a game is a thing that you study through observation and adjustment, rather than something where you like try to figure it out from first principles and then do something. What's interesting to me about that is that if you look at game design, so game studies is one side of like games academia, game design education is the other. If you look at how game design is taught, it often is pushing away from that. It's about how do you communicate to the player in advance of them trying anything what they need to do. And the extreme version of this is what's coming to be known as the yellow paint problem, right? The thing that is in the Tomb Raider 2013 and the Resident Evil, the recent Resident Evil games, where like there'll be a cluttered environment and something in it that you need or can interact with, and the thing will be marked out by some like recurring color pattern, like yellow paint, or I mean, it's often yellow paint for some reason.
I mean,
And
it's yellow paint because it stands out against the visual design of a lot of things.
yeah, and gamers like there's been a rising trend of like hardcore gamers complaining about this, and every time that this happens, game designers point out that like we have seen what happens when we don't put the yellow paint in, and what happens is that players get very frustrated poking everything in the environment to try to figure out which is the one thing that will work. And the yellow paint problem is really a failure mode of this school of game design, because if it gets to the point where you need the yellow paint, there are subtler tricks that you could have used that you haven't taken advantage of in terms of spatial design, lighting design, and there are whole textbooks on that stuff. But as video games have, I don't want to say matured because that is maybe like too value laden, but as the industry has coalesced around a set of design norms, increasingly the emphasis has shifted towards what you might call frictionless design, where you don't have to try a thing, evaluate what happens from it, change what you do, and respond. Like that empiricist aspect, kind of fades away, and like I play a lot of the older 3D Zelda games, like you and I do both, Val.
Mhm.
And one of the things I like about them is how good they are at this. Like a Zelda dungeon, a classic, classic 3D Zelda dungeon, walks you through a set of rooms where you have to improvise a solution to a problem, and then hands you a tool that would solve all those problems. And then the rest of the dungeon is you use that tool, the boomerang or whatever.
Mhm.
And I really like that because empiricism is hard and you have to fail a lot. And I don't play games to fail a lot. And so when people told me that Armored Core was going to be like heavily empiricistic, that was a kind of worst case scenario for me. But one aspect of game difficulty is your ability to do that empiricism loop. Try a thing, evaluate its response, adjust what you do.
Mm.
And one of the things I specifically struggle with is kind of comparatively evaluating responses. I changed which weapon I'm using. Am I doing more damage now? I can't tell because I can't pay attention in the right ways because my eyes glaze over. Or I'm too busy looking at the sparkly lights to notice the size of the like section that goes missing from the enemy's health bar. And Dol also talking about Sierra and like having hint phone lines, which was a whole thing in the 90s, and you don't see that anymore.
Strategy guides have also fallen off, like officially sanctioned ones.
Yes.
And not just because games have ballooned so large that it would be a waste of paper.
Well, I think like one of the things that did for the like commercially released strategy guide is that for a while people did those for free on Game FAQs.
Yeah, I know, but also like there up until like the mid-aughts, there were definitely really high quality like strategy guides from the publisher slash developer, especially with like Nintendo. Like it's just like they have stopped needing to, like, for all the things that I will fault Nintendo for, and by God, there's a lot of those. They've stopped needing to do that so much because they've just designed their games in a more telegraphed way.
Yeah, like Nintendo specifically have really perfected and have been working on perfecting for 40 years, have really perfected that kind of subliminally teach players how to play the game. And like we as experienced Nintendo gamers who've been playing these games for years, it probably feels a bit patronizing most of the time. And lots of people say that about Nintendo games, like, oh yeah, it's obvious that like blah 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 Mario has to hit the boxes to get a mushroom. But Nintendo is making games for children and thus is always aiming at an audience who are new to the games.
Yeah. So a lot of fucking really patronizing game design videos will bring up, oh, like, every game should be like Super Mario Bros. 1-1 that it teaches you without teaching you. And it's like, okay, but like, things are more complex now, for one. And for two, every game is a little bit like that. Like, it's just how many gaps they put in the way and how many one-ups they give you. Like, if you had 1-1 but you had 99 one-ups, you're probably going to get to the end. Or if you had 1-1 but no enemies or holes in the ground, you're probably going to get to the end. Like, that
sounds like my kind of game.
Exactly. That's like the main thing. Like, if we are looking at me or Leroy or Doll, also a stubborn gamer, who is playing a new game and is having trouble with something, we just have more one-ups to practice with in terms of like spoons than you do.
Yeah.
Which
well, I do when I think through this, because I'm actually just going to critique Armored Core, but
yeah, go for it.
there's like there's like an assumption to Nintendo games. I would say it's even an ideological assumption where obviously they are great at teaching you to learn how to play games, but then you start, you're encountering this world that's sort of terraformed for you. And so instead of it feeling organic or, part of a fictional world, it instead, use the word use gaming. It feels very, it just feels very, I guess I said it, it feels like it just exists for your pleasure. And that's beyond patronizing. That starts to just like feel just like grating. It's just like, it's just irritating.
The name for this in like design talk is literally player-centric design.
Yeah,
and it absolutely is, and this is why like
for me the funny thing is Armored Core 6 is this very empirical game where you need to experiment and figure out things, and it's still insanely player-centric, where like everything sort of hinges on your excellence, right? Your excellence as a freelancer. You sort of like break these breakpoints and barriers just because you're so good at it. And so it has this very player-centric fantasy, even if the design isn't nearly as player-centric.
And like one thing that came out of like the alt games movement, which now we're talking 10 years ago now, is it's terrifying. But like Matty Bryce wrote an essay called "Fuck the Player." Matty Bryce's essay is called "Fuck the World." Lana Polanski's is "The Customer is Often Wrong, Fuck the Player." Both of which are about this exact thing, that commercial games are fundamentally designed in the company level assumption that they are there to give people to get people to give them money in exchange for pleasure. and then pleasure is constructed in different ways. You know, if you want to play a Kirby game, you're probably not playing it to feel the same kind of pleasure, phenomenologically speaking, as you are if you're playing an Armored Core game.
That's
Right?
the end game for a lot of Kirby games is actually quite difficult. That's
True.
But
Maybe
not
not
Armored Core. But you get what she's.
yeah, no, I get
Yeah.
it.
Like, you know, Armored Core is selling you what we used to call a power fantasy, right? It's like, I can be so good at this that I get to look down on other people about it. Which is why FromSoft game difficulty discourse, it gets so toxic. Whereas Kirby is selling you on, I can be a cute little happy ball of fun and save the world.
Hmm.
Or Zelda. I mean, like, probably actually Zelda is a better example pre Breath of the Wild, which changed things a bit. But like, you know, Wind Waker, for example, not a very hard game, but it's about getting you to feel like you are the legendary hero saving the world and going on an adventure and having all the fun of being on an adventure and stuff.
It's so the thing with like there's also like a genre of quote power fantasy that is specifically the power fantasy of like wanting the struggle. And like I buy into that because it's artificial struggles are fun when they are balanced correctly. That's a whole different issue. But like talking like that also kind of makes me feel like the I watch too much isekai. That's how I'm starting this point. There are multiple different genres of like power fantasy that isekai shows tend to go for. You have the one that's like isekai smartphone. I have power, I get to help people. Hooray! Generally light tone. Then there's power fantasies like Rising of the Shield Hero. I have been wronged, but I have power so I can wrong them back. Hooray!
Yeah.
And it feels like fighting against well-designed, anyway, difficult games is that kind of power fantasy where like it's a sparring match. Like and you get to take a few swings at this motherfucker of a game and come out feeling better about yourself for having gotten as far as you did or doing as well as you've done. And like there's friction there and there's catharsis from having like overcome that friction. And not all games need that. But fucking FromSoft fans sure want every game to need that.
And they really don't like the idea that you might want something from a FromSoft game other than that as well. And also like to go back to game studies for a second, like the arbitrary problem or the voluntary obstacle, as it's sometimes called, is like it's one of those things. It's one of the categories of I'm going to define all of video games in these terms, and it's always about like voluntary obstacles is one of the big ones there.
Yeah.
I think largely owed to Bernard Suits, the grasshopper. If you want to have a citation for that.
Dura in chat also.
Dura in chat. Like, there's a power fantasy about learning how to be powerful, and there's a powerful fantasy about being powerful. This used to get talked about. I think this is an Austin Walker point and Rowan Kaiser. It's like there's cheat codes, right? If you play Doom, you can put in IDDQD and be invulnerable. Or you can get good at Doom and like have a different kind of feeling of power that instead of coming from being like completely impervious to harm, comes from being just better than the AI at playing the game. Those are two different phenomenologies.
Yeah.
And some people want one and some people want the other.
And you can cater to both, but the one who wants to be challenged and learn to get there will feel slighted if the option to go the other way is there, because they're petty little assholes.
I mean, it's interesting you say that because, specifically on the example of Doom, I am not sure that that discourse existed to anything like the extent it does around Dark Souls
Yeah, but also that was
back
before
when, and I
before
think it
social
tells us some.
media.
Yeah, well, yeah, it tells us that these discourses are not intrinsic to the
Well, yeah,
form; they're a social context thing.
yeah.
Like any craving for any kind of power is always going to kind of reach outside of the game itself.
Also,
Um,
yeah, Doll is not wrong. Doll has been going on about this because they've been playing WoW on a private server that is basically just them and bots. So,
mm,
bots. Um, Achievements are a way to show your prowess and show off. And if
yeah,
they are designed poorly, which a lot of them are, um, they are going to be a tool to be used by people who want to make themselves feel special and put other people down.
yeah. Well, Dol specifically cites Xbox Live achievements, and yes, that was the first kind of achievements, but
Mhm.
also it matters that it was Xbox Live, that it was a platformized social network for gamers,
And also,
right?
notably, one of the worst places to
Yeah,
be.
yeah. Compare so like Final Fantasy 12 has the Sky Pirates Den, and it had the Sky Pirates Den on PS2, which was not extensively networked as a console. And that's just like a cute little set of extra things you can do.
Set of
Um,
internal, not
yeah,
like it's not networked to anything. No one's
yeah,
going to see your PS2 mem card unless you show them.
yeah, yeah. And you might show that off to a friend who came round to hang out, but it's not something that you're broadcasting to the entire internet, and it's not integrated into a broader system.
Hmm.
Um, and like lots of games had shit like the other example that comes to mind is the Perfect Dark cheat system, which was really an achievement system, right? You beat levels in particular ways, you can unlock particular like special toggles like paintball mode or big head mode or whatever.
Yeah, and
Um,
Doll's rambling again, but yes, like if you beat a game with cheats in 1997, it's fine. You still got to see the ending. You can still talk about it. In 2007, there were no cheats because we must maintain the integrity of the recognition of the achievement, and just yeah,
mhm. The
it's
neoliberal video game.
yup.
We must all freely compete in the marketplace of gamer. Um,
Uh, and yeah, it's been interesting watching them go through World of Warcraft Vanilla and talk about all the fucking nonsense that went on in that game from the
hmm,
start of it to when they quit, and then some. They've talked about some later expansion changes as well, and it's just like
yeah.
there is a group of gamers. There is a type of gamer who will not be happy unless they can like have an exclusive bit of like nonsense to show off as like I'm better than you.
Hmm.
God.
And Otter in chat brings up like deliberately renting Xbox games they hated and didn't want to play because they were an easy source of gamer score.
The fact that there
And
was a
like,
point value attached to gamers' score is just like,
yeah.
what? Well, why would you do this? This is how you make the worst
Well,
people.
there's also like a cottage industry of people making Steam achievement score pumping software on
Yep.
Steam, right? Like that stuff still happens. Um, it's just they took out the game the thing of you hate to play the game, and it's just like there isn't really a game there. You just like open the software up and click a bunch of buttons, and the achievements pop.
Mhm.
Um, and like there's a whole kind of sociocultural history of how that mindset develops. Um, it's almost entirely superfluous to it exists on a separate level to the games themselves.
Yeah.
But it's profoundly ideologically charged. I don't mention the neoliberalism purely facetiously. Like, this is literally how the prevailing capitalist ideology of our time works, and how it works through games. And that colors a lot of what we say about difficulty in games.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that it colors a lot of what we say about difficulty in different kinds of jobs. I used to do a thing with my students, where I would ask them to like guess at the salaries of different jobs and then compare that to their experiences of doing those jobs and how difficult they are. Starting with, how much does a lecturer make? Do you think you could do my job? How much? What are the best paid jobs? Well, lawyer and doctor and stuff. What are the hardest jobs? Well, or what are the jobs you would least like to have to do? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like fast food and the bins. And we don't pay in proportion to those things because unless you think specifically in terms of your own experiences of them, we have been taught to think of particular kinds of job as the most difficult ones and therefore the most rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
And games are a form of reproductivity. In that they're a cultural artifact designed to reinforce that way of thinking, which is sometimes called meritocracy, right? The idea that people who are better at the thing get more rewards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. Anyway, if we're speaking about capitalism, should we talk about the plot of the game?
Yeah, we probably should.
This is a segue for you.
I don't know that I should put the spoiler banner down, but I will because yeah. Bloop. We're gonna talk about the story. We're gonna talk about all 3 playthroughs, and there will be some spoilers. I don't think any of the spoilers are like meaningfully going to dissuade you from enjoying the plot as it is. Because I don't think the plot is like the point, really.
It's so the thing I would say is it's super not suspenseful,
Mhm.
right? Like, there are reveals, and if you are
It's a
not,
thriller. It's
yeah,
not like got a lot of mystery to it.
yeah, if you are conversant in the kinds of sci-fi mystery that attend on this kind of deep future, like space opera, you will predict everything pretty straightforwardly.
Mhm.
But you might be coming to this from other perspectives, and it might be new to you. But I don't think surprise at what happens matters a great deal. I think it is much more a game where if you know what's going to happen, you're going to be more attentive to the foreshadowing.
Mhm.
And a lot of its storytelling strength is in how it foreshadows.
Yeah.
If you know where it's going, you'll appreciate more little details of the dialogue writing where characters kind of tip their hand a little bit.
Yeah, I actually think they held on to their reveals too long because I was like completely not invested in the story until chapter 5, and oh, this is actually okay.
Mm.
Mhm.
Um,
It's also like because of how the divergent endings happen. Like we're probably just gonna cover New Game and New Game Plus in one go.
yeah.
So yeah, also True Bird. Like the second playthrough, you have an idea of like you have more of an established idea of what the landscape in terms of factions are doing, and you're not just trying to cope with getting used to the mech thing and grinding your bosses for the first time for fucking 2 or 3 hours. Like the I will gently tease Becky about this sometimes, but sometimes she will take long enough on stuff that she forgets where the plot is,
Oh,
and
extremely,
and
especially
it
with this game.
yeah, like in other games too, but like this one was pretty rough. And then you
I
take a
mean, this one I
break.
could only face playing about twice a week.
Yeah.
It really gets in the way.
But yeah, so you are pulled out of stasis by your handler, Walter, You play as augmented human C4621, and the opening mission is you go and retrieve basically a license from a downed AC. You make it out. You use the license to go, hey, I'm alive. I'm definitely checks name tag Raven. And then
Yeah, this is specifically a license to operate on this specific planet as a mercenary. It's like
yeah, like a hunting
registering with the local
license.
government,
Yeah.
basically.
Except
Um,
not I actually don't know who you're registering with.
yeah,
All
well, I
Might.
mean, you're registering with All Mind, and the question is, who set up All Mind? And
That
Yeah.
question is not answered.
It
it's
really
not
isn't.
answered. My guess would be that All Mind is kind of fundamentally it's a part of the PCA bureaucracy, but it is a part of the PCA bureaucracy that is primarily used by the corporations. Does that
Yeah.
sound like it fits? Like I'm
I
thinking in terms of
the
like there
the
are British civil service branches that operate like this.
yeah, the thing is like All Mind probably like because of the shit All Mind gets up to, I want to say that they probably answered originally they answered to some higher power than the PCA because otherwise they would just fucking report you immediately.
There's
Yeah.
also a possibility that this version of All Mind just is going rogue. Like
Yeah.
Yes.
maybe it is an apparatus to the PCA or something, but its goals aren't aligned.
Yeah.
So let's quickly summarize those terms. There's the PCA, which is the Planetary Closure Administration,
Yep.
which is a government military organization whose job is to prevent people coming to Rubicon, the planet that you're on.
Yeah, and ostensibly other planets as well, but since this is the one we're we're active on, this is the relevant one.
Yeah,
And
well, it's primarily about Rubicon because it's about preventing like exploitation of the coral or something to do with the coral.
I don't
I'm
think
going to ask I'm going to ask a question about like
that's
someone explain coral to me in a minute, but
yeah, so the problem is I don't think the PCA has like a stated philosophy. They have a leader, which is the system, which is
yeah,
quote all mind question mark? All mind
yeah.
prime? I don't know.
But so they represent government basically, and then there are a bunch of corporations,
two major groups.
private. They're two main groups, but like private industry generally. One thing that's pretty clear is that they are, they have as much in common as they do have as they have against one another.
Yeah.
They're the same kinds of same kinds of organization. They're doing the same kinds of stuff, and they have various kind of professionally employed paramilitary organizations, mercenary companies, and also they subcontract out to independent mercenaries, which is what you play as.
And they also all function a lot of their sub companies also function as weapons development.
Yeah, they're literally arms dealers. Like
Yeah.
even though they have their own army of Pinkertons, whatever they have this they have their own role as like a government, a nation, and an army all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like colonial companies.
Yeah, I
Kinda.
mean, it like the British and Dutch East India companies make good kind of analogies there. I think.
Yeah,
But also just like the American military industrial complex is
that too.
like it exists.
Yeah.
I think I like that tension because you have to actually like buy their stuff. You have to buy all their stuff and play by their rules. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty depressing.
And the thing we've been calling All Mind, as you encounter it in the game, is the agency, and it must have some sort of legal weight, right? It must have some sort of government status. Is the agency that registers mercenaries and tracks their progress, and also like offers them. It's almost like a state-owned professional association for mercenaries, because it offers us a bunch of like training services for mercenaries, like the arena.
Yeah.
But it also like harvests data from you, and it has legal authority over you because you have to register with it.
It's like a guild and like a technocratic platform.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think guild is maybe a really good way of thinking about it, except that it's a government owned thing, or
Yeah.
government licensed thing, maybe.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like it's kind of a third party, just like
yeah,
a third party tool that got integrated into whatever government management. Yeah, it's the gig
it's one of
economy manager.
yeah, and
Um,
it's like yeah, no one of these organizations is actually kind of supreme. The PCA is maybe the most powerful because their tech is the most advanced.
mhm.
Um, uh, but
And also in historical figures is the Rubicon Research Institute, which was an institute which researched coral, which is what
yes,
you are on Rubicon to find a deposit of, basically, under the
yes.
care of Handler Walter.
We also should mention there's the Rubicon Liberation Front,
Yeah.
which, you know, if you write RLF, that's one like leg of the R away from being the Palestinian Liberation Front (PLF).
Yeah.
Mm,
Like it's it is
This is pointless trivia, but in a data log it states they're backed by some of the corporations too. They're backed by Furlong and Elcano.
mm-hmm,
The Elcano one
uh,
is kind of obvious when Rusty shows up, but
mm-hmm.
yeah. I think I would guess, and I'm not sure, that I bet a bunch of the proper nouns there are recurring from previous Armored Core games. Um,
I wouldn't
yeah,
know.
like the deeper you look in, you'd be like, oh, this tells us something about that. If you played For Answer or one of the earlier games.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, so yeah, you are basically tasked with uh, getting your rep up so that people will hire you as Raven, as
mm,
61, to go uh across the sea and find the coral. You're also tasked with a few missions by Walter himself instead of taking orders from either corporation, and one of
mhm,
them places you in contact with a coral explosion because you go attack a watch point that's monitoring the coral flow under a deposit that existed, but it's basically just dregs now, and
yeah.
you blow it up, and that sparks a bunch of coral exploding, and you get knocked unconscious, only to meet Air, a Rubiconian,
Mm.
who makes contact
Can
with you.
we just back up a second?
Mhm.
At the start of the game, there's an explanation of what coral is, right?
That
And
changes over the course of the game.
it does change over the course of the game. And I can't remember exactly what you're told at first, but like it's an energy source.
It's an energy source.
It forms on Rubicon. It doesn't form elsewhere in the galaxy, does it?
No,
Or is it just it forms more on Rubicon than elsewhere?
no, it's exclusively a Rubiconian thing, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is why,
And
yeah,
in the past, exploitation of it led to a disaster called the Fires of Ibis.
which scorched the skies and the
Yeah.
planet itself because of how
Yes.
wide the fires raged.
Yeah. So it it's a sci-fi MacGuffin.
Hmm.
it's
It's like
Spice.
it's like Spice in Dune or
Yeah.
Mako in Final Fantasy VII.
Hmm.
Um, and then, like as Val said, there's a moment where you're exposed to an outburst of coral, and you get stuck with a voice in your head whose name is Air, and who speaks for the coral.
Yeah, ish. She doesn't give away the thing immediately, but like she's just like,
Yeah.
I'm a Rubiconian, we've made contact, I'm gonna be in your head for a little bit. Don't mind me. And then
So I actually want your opinion on this. Is Air is she sort of alien life form on Rubicon, or is she someone who perished in the fires of Ibis and became part of the coral? I feel like it's unclear.
I
I
think it doesn't matter.
I
But
mean, yeah, it doesn't matter.
I can see room for both interpretations. My interpretation, because I have a distinct bias in this direction, was that Coral is sentient alien life, and like when she says Rubiconians, she means that species that make up the coral.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just in chapter 4 she talks about families, and she even mentions the family unit, and then she says mothers and fathers and children and stuff. And that's when I was like, huh? Because my first reading was that one, but then I don't know. I don't know what it's trying to say.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
there is that moment. I took it as being like, well, okay, aliens get to have families too.
Yeah, true.
Which, you could argue is a bit of a failure of imagination on the part of the writers to just say, oh yeah, like aliens also have like the exact structural equivalent of like mommy and daddy and two kids and a dog and a cat and a house with a white picket fence. But like I think it is just that they must have some sort of reproductive family structure, so it gets talked about as family. And I don't remember her saying anything that felt to me like she was talking about having lived as a human.
yeah, no, she
Um,
reveals that later on that she is like just a waveform. But
yeah,
Well, yeah, but you can become a witch. That is actually a sci-fi
yeah, but no one
trope at this
had
point.
no one the thing is no one has until the end of the third playthrough.
yeah,
Like that's an entire thing you have to go through. That's the core release. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
yes,
Well,
You
I mean, I'm not saying it matters either way. But if the mechanism to cause a core release is there, then it already happened, or it could have already.
yeah, but
yeah,
it didn't unless like there's nothing saying that it definitely happened, and I don't even really think there's anything saying it might have happened. Like I don't. That's the
mhm.
thing. It's
It's pretty.
being
It's pretty up to your.
Yeah.
It's
I
from
mean,
soft.
there's an element from what I've grasped of the other endings. There's a little bit of an element of like Air's interest in you is the hope that you will be the first to kind of make the jump across the divide.
yeah,
Um, but I
and All Mind's interest in causing it is because it's only been rumored at this point. Like
yeah, which at least means there are no like well documented
The
cases of
only
it.
the only wrinkle is Father Dolumon. He's very much aware of what it is, and he has like this super deep seated guilt and stuff.
yeah, because
But what's his
he
guilt for?
also
They don't know. They don't tell you.
Yeah,
yeah, it's also he had contact. So um, but yeah,
yeah.
so
He might also have talked directly with Rubiconians.
yeah, I mean he had one in his like he had Saria, like he calls out her name when he dies in New Game Plus Plus. Anyway, we're going back to the plot we were talking about. So you, in the course of doing the stuff to get to meeting Air, you meet a couple of mercs. You introduce yourself to them, make a couple of friends over the course of a few missions, make some enemies because Gun 5 Iguazu fucking hates you, and he's a dumb little Bakugo ass bastard. Just get out. Anyway, and in New Game Plus, since we're just kind of wrapping New Game Plus stuff into this, you've had a chance to get to know Iguazu over the course of the game, and the Rubicon Liberation Front goes, "Hey, do you want to fucking fight the Iguazu like the first time you meet him?" And if you do, you get like a friendly ID for the Rubicon Liberation Front. They give you a few more missions over the course of the thing. It's not a whole lot of difference, but it opens up a few plot points. So anyway, once the coral explosion happens, you talk to Air. You learn that you can now see the voices of the coral, which is like particles of coral flowing through the air, and they're all leading to the west, across the alien ocean. And you go, okay, we should probably go that way if we're trying to find all the coral. Um, you get told to take some fucking days off because you just got out of a coral explosion and that's not good for you, and you ignore them and go shoot yourself out of a cannon. Um, that's it. Really, just does hop from Baltius to let's go help Carla after beating up her Roomba and launch ourselves out of a cannon. A lot of things happen in rapid succession. Anyway, um, In the process of getting across the ocean, which you're using a cargo cannon to do, you get ambushed by uh, you get ambushed by the PCA satellites, which they have like an array of satellites that make traveling over land and not under the superstructure surrounding Rubicon really dangerous because they will just laser you to death. And
Rubicon, bits of Rubicon are covered in like basically the equivalent of like ultra giant oil rigs
yeah,
that are left over from when the planet was being like
correct
exploited for
for
coral.
coral, yeah. And then on top of the satellites, you get ambushed by a sea spider, a coral weapon made by the Rubicon Research Institute, that is apparently fueled by coral, to which air reacts with displeasure and shock. It's dangerous, and your new friend Carla, who you killed the Roomba of, is just like, who left this fucking coral weapon out? That's bad. That's dangerous. And then you blow it up and go, I hope that's not a bad sign. And then you shoot yourself across the ocean. And then you get to the longest chapter in the game.
Mm-hmm.
How do I summarize chapter 3?
Worms.
Worm. There is one worm.
There is
The
one
war against the PCA. It's kind of just goes.
Yeah.
So basically, what happens is as you and the corporations like make your way towards this like concentration of coral that everybody's trying to fight over, the PCA like realizes what's going on and mobilizes its massively technologically advanced force to stop you, and you all kind of come together to kick their ass.
Mm-hmm.
And it rules, frankly. That
Yeah.
chapter fucking rules, and the boss is awesome.
So you take out their fleet. Your friend Rusty takes out their comms while you are handling like blowing up their ships. They bring more ships in. You blow them up too. They bring dudes in. You blow them up, and then they're just like, "You're authorized to use the worm," and then the worm shows up. Like that's straight up just like IAO2 has been authorized, and then just like Air's just, hey Raven, uh-oh, and then you have to do a bunch of missions to fight the worm.
Yeah, the worm is like significantly taller than a mech and like a kilometer long or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it can tunnel at 100 miles an hour, and it's got lasers and shit. And you do various things that involve working together with the other factions against the PCA. And then there's a boss fight where you shoot the worm in the face with a stun gun and then go to town on it, and it's awesome.
Yep.
And then you have to actually go and like find the source of the coral, which involves going down a deep hole and bypassing a bunch of security measures and getting into fights with what's left of all the other factions, because you're all kind of licking your wounds from the war with the PCA. And various double crosses and backstabs happen, and eventually you get to the bottom of the hole and you find the ruins of a city built by the Coral Research Institute, and that's where I got stuck.
Yeah. So you eventually make you make the approach to the vascular plant, which is drawing coral up through it and processing it ostensibly in this giant underground city. And in the process, Air goes, "Oh shit, the coral's regrowing. That's like a lot of coral. Oh my god, my family." And then in the process, you get attacked by the Ibis series, which is a coral-based automated, like an autonomous mech that will tear your shit apart. And it goes down, and then it draws on all the coral in the water and around it to come back up and fight you some more. and you go, oh wow, there's a lot of we've been walking through the city that has been full of robots that have been running on sustainable power for 50 years without dropping a bit, and this robot is really dangerous. We should probably do something about that. And then you get tased and you get knocked out and everything goes wrong. This is the end of chapter 4 is like the main divergent point between all three playthroughs, really. So on the first two playthroughs, you get to pick between. After this, either way, you have to escape from the thing. Walter is basically lost, but Carla comes to save you, and then she reveals that a floating city that you did like a survey of earlier was secretly a giant spaceship, and it rises up into the exosphere, and then you get to yeah.
You skipped a point, which is that the vascular plant, which is this ancient structure that you rediscovered, gets reactivated and is funneling all the coral into.
I said that it was processing coral.
Yeah, but you didn't say that it got reactivated and set up like in space.
That's kind of because it also glosses over that, like
yeah,
like that happens while you're knocked out.
yes. And it's the problem that you have to ultimately. That's the big problem you have to deal with once you recover.
And while doing so, you have to choose between helping Carla out and burning the coral, which will betray air, or killing Carla and going with air to fight to liberate Rubicon. And in the first one, you have to fight Rusty, who was secretly part of the Rubicon Liberation Front. Not that secretly, but he was a mole, and earlier on he fights alongside on New Game Plus. He fights alongside one of the leaders of the RLF to stop you from getting to the Institute City. And then you fight Air on that route, who is controlling. I don't know what that mech is called. I don't know if it has a proper name. It's not the mech that she later gets for her own personal use. It's hard. It's a hard fight. It has like mechanics that are throwing back to the super boss from Elden Ring. Like it's a difficult fight. All the final bosses in this game are hard as fuck. But yeah, if you do that, you burn all the coral to the last cinder, and then you leave Rubicon, and you basically become this horrifying legend, and the fires of Raven are kept in memory.
It's basically a second Fires of Ibis, right? It's a repeat of the disaster that led to Rubicon being sealed and like because it's not entirely clear what the Fires of Ibis were, but it says that they devastated the ability to travel between worlds.
Yeah, no, like the Fires of Ibis were like, what if the entire world, the entire planet of Rubicon were saturated in coral, and one of the Ibis series set it all off?
Well, Walter says people who are working. He tells like a story about like when he's revealing the history of Overseer, which is their own secret faction the whole time.
Yeah.
That out of the people originally working on Coral, one of them wanted to do all kind of heinous stuff like human augmentation and stuff, and the other one, he says, destroys it, try to destroy it. So there's an implication there that maybe the Fires of Ibis was intentionally triggered. You know, much like what was going to happen that ended.
Yeah, but because they were developing the Ibis series, that's what it ended up being known as. Another bird. And you, by sparking the one that causes the ending, you spark the fires of Raven, and that's rough, buddy.
think it also implies that 621 just like dies there, just like
No, I
by the
think
blast.
I'm pretty sure they mentioned like they're feared for and like pursued for their fucking war crime that they did.
Okay, I
Yeah,
I don't
or at
remember.
least like yeah, they become a symbol of like hatred
Mm-hmm.
at very least. Whether that is whether they survived or not, people fear that they might have survived.
Yeah, and their
Um,
legacy is one of death either way.
yeah.
Meanwhile, the other ending is if you take out Carla and try and take out the Xylem, which is the flying city ship, um, you team up with Rusty, you kick the shit out of one of the corporation's de facto leaders in Super Balteus. I hate that fight still. What an asshole. Um, and then you are forced to confront Arquebus, one of the corps, put your handler in a mech made of coral and dosed with coral, and he's a mess. And it's pretty you Yevon. It's not a very hard fight, but after the Baltius fight, I was just like, okay, I will take this first try. Thank you. And it is
Yeah.
then that 61 becomes like the savior of Rubicon. He literally gets called by Rusty, the liberator of Rubicon. And it's just like, okay, ease up a little. What are you doing? Um, so throughout these playthroughs, the new game one, All Mind slowly doles out more and more like arena fights. And it's just like, yeah, you can test yourself against simulations of other combatants in this arena. Have fun. I will reward you if you do well. And it's just like, okay, cool. I guess I can fight some enemy mechs that I, recognize and have fun time against them. Get some extra stuff. Get some
Yeah.
mechanical
An
benefits.
interesting thing with the arena is that typically the fights unlock just before you encounter that mech in the story.
Yeah, it's a little
Like not
weird.
all of the arena duels are with story characters, but all of
Mhm.
the ones that are, you can fight them in the arena before going into the actual level where they're the boss.
Yeah,
I also
Um,
gotta say those symmetrical fights, where you're actually fighting against other ACs that have the same parts you can have. That's actually really fun. Like I
Mhm.
never felt frustrated doing those.
Yeah. It's always just like, well, this isn't even a playing field. I just need to handle myself on this particular sort of level because you need to
yeah.
have different mentalities for fighting. This thing can do all the things I can do versus this motherfucker is in a spaceship and it has so many lasers.
Yeah.
um.
Yeah.
So yeah, over the course of the game, it slowly like doles out like three at a time or something like that. No, I'm thinking of integration, which is the next one. Anyway, Arena doles out partners for you to duel with. New Game
Yeah.
Plus, at the same points that you would be getting new arena options, you get handed integration, and it's just like, hey, you've been very helpful with all this arena fighting and stuff, and you're like, are we in a time loop? How do you what? Excuse me. And then they're just like, hey, don't ask questions. I'm trying to improve a robot. Do you want to help me fight things and like make it better? And you're just like, yes, give me more OS tuning chips, please. And then eventually it's just like, okay, thank you for your service. We're done here. And like there's three more remaining. And Elmine doesn't talk to you again for the rest of the playthrough. And you're just like, huh, okay. And then New Game Plus Plus starts happening. There's a pretty early divergence where like you go to escort a mobile weapons platform that you were originally forced to destroy, except it's already blowing up when you get there, and you're getting attacked by the Rubicon Institute stuff from the Institute City, like the giant metal wheels with flamethrowers and missiles. We call them bone wheels because they're kind of the bone wheels from Dark Souls, but like they're mechs. Um, and then a bunch of different stuff starts happening, and it eventually culminates in when you go to the uninhabited city, the Xylem, to do the survey. Originally, when you get to the end, you shut down the fog that's keeping you from targeting things and getting comms from your handler. And like a fucking helicopter shows up, and an assault chopper just shows up and tries to kick your ass, and you're just like, okay. In New Game Plus Plus, unlike the original where Walter warns you about it, All Mind's just like, hey, you are being pursued. Just gonna let you know that you're being pursued and you should probably fight back. And I'm giving you a request for that right now. And someone blows up the assault chopper, and it's the leader of the RLF, and you have to fight him. And he starts talking about, like, I didn't feel like they gave enough screen time. Maybe it was just me missing out on the New Game Plus Plus variant that might exist on the prisoner rescue mission, but I feel like they didn't really give enough screen time to the RLF's like relationship with Coral as like a spiritual object, because
Yeah,
that
I would
comes
agree.
up that comes up when he starts basically quoting like an anthem of theirs at you in the middle of the fight, and then goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Syria. I guess I'll see you on the other side," and fucking dies.
That was another thing that made me think that it's like an afterlife on Ruby, but it doesn't have to be.
Mm. Yeah,
It could be that they have realized the possibility of that, and thus they believe it's what's waiting for them,
yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
just wrong. Like,
Mm.
Yeah,
it's harder to achieve.
but
than that.
I think the RL's also just like kind of under characterized. You spend a lot more time with the corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
I mean, you're not really given a lot of options to spend time with the RLF in the first playthrough, and the second one is just like a couple sips of like, there could have been a whole hearty bowl of something here. You're giving me barely a taste. And
Yeah.
it feels a little lackluster when it finally comes to like, we need to talk about the coral, which is the third playthrough. It's just like, okay, but you know the coral's sentient, right? Like that's a whole thing. We kind of ignoring because we're corpos and we don't care. We want to use it to fire guns. Over the course of New Game Plus Plus, I think I forget if it's right after or like right before that All Mind bit. Air, like, it's before that. The earlier on, there's a thing where like a bunch of mysterious mechs attack you, and she decrypts some of their stuff, which she couldn't do in earlier playthroughs. And in doing so, she like learns how to decrypt other stuff, and she finds some data in the arena for integrating into like whatever All Mind was doing, and she's just like, hey, this is locked down. You want to fight this and see what the deal is? And it's Rusty's mech from one of the routes you've already played. And then later on, she finds another one, and it's Handler Walter's mech from the route you've already played. And then she finally unlocks the third one, and she's just like, huh, this doesn't have like a person associated with it, and it's coral controlled. I'm gonna pilot this. And you fight her in the arena, and like she's like, that was really useful, and I get why like you evolved this form to basically fight with yourselves forever. Which is just like, what a fucked up way to learn that. I and it's just like, okay, yeah, that's yep. And then
I guess that's like the most advanced machine learning systems now, like partly learn by playing themselves
yeah.
at tasks. Like the whole thing with Google's second Go winning machine was that it did that.
Hmm.
That's totally the implication with All Mind, who's like
Yeah.
integrating all the battle data you gave him.
And also like integrating all the people, because All Mind eventually interjects again at the end of chapter 4, and when you enter Institute City, and you beat up some people, and Handler Walter's like, okay, head for the vascular plant, where all the the coral is. And All Mind's just like, I have a better idea. Go kill these guys. Um, and so it redirects you to the place where the guy who is going to ambush you after the boss fight is. You take him out. He's also joined by fucking Gunfire Iguazu, little shithead. You have to do a 2 versus 1 duel in like a cage match for some fucking reason. It's very funny and also mean. But once you do that, because you don't get tased, you don't have to like escape and go meet with Carla, and your handler isn't like getting kidnapped. So All Mind's just like, okay, I have a deal for you. You get out to this rendezvous point, and I'll overwrite the record so it looks like you died. And you will vanish without trace. You don't need to worry about anyone else trying to target you ever again. And the entire time you've been playing this game, Walter has been like, I really want better for you, and I want you to find someplace that isn't a war zone to live your fucking life. So, like, I can see why a 621 would go for this. You make it out, and in the process of escaping to the rendezvous point, it hacks basically all of the PCA drones and the Institute drones in the entire descent to fight for you against the corporations who are trying to kill the shit out of you because you caused all the problems. And there's literally a guy who points a missile at you and goes, that AC is at fault. We need to kill them. Go. At like a squad of dudes. And they all just rush you. And while you're doing this, All Mind's just like, see how they're all like scrambling and shit? A chain of human links will break easily. You need to be integrated. And I'm like, cool. This is not going to end well. And then once you get out, it's just like, cool, you're under a protection. No one will target you anymore. You wake up from induced sleep to your onboard computer going, understood, Master All Minds. Which was the moment I was just like, that's no good. We're in danger. Because like a UI element calling a character Master was like, I knew All Mind was bad news, but that was something else. That was just like a little uncanny. I was just like, oh.
Yeah, that does sound cool, to be fair.
And then also All Mind addresses air. And then you do the thing that All Mind wants you to basically get rid of the parasite modules on the Xylem that are keeping Carla and Overseer, Walter, in control of the ship. You do that, and in the process, you get comms from them going, well, we fucked up 621's against us, Ravens, like, betrayed us, and All Mind's just like, don't worry about them, I'll handle them. And then comms cut off. And then when you finish the mission, it's just like, okay, you need to get up here, we need to handle something. And then All Mind goes, wow, look at all the coral. Anyway, time to die.
Yeah, the thing we need to handle is you.
Yup. And then and then Gunfire Iguazu starts talking out of the same body. And he's just like, oh, freelancer. I got into this fucking mess because of you. I joined up with this monstrosity so I could kill you. Let's fucking go. And then the final boss fight happens. And yeah. The entire time. God.
What's that?
yeah, it's so in the middle of the fight, like it starts out, it's Iguazu and a squad of other not talky robot people, and you're basically like, oh, All Mind has literally been like integrating all the pilots and all the data into itself, and for some reason it chose Iguazu because he was like a an acceptable human to like latch onto, and Iguazu is just like, oh, I'm gonna kill the shit out of you. And then he tries his best and does not make it. Has some really honestly good lines in the middle of phase one. And then you beat him up. He falls over. All Mind gives him a bigger, beefier body and backup. And also Air shows up in her mech that you fought her in the arena because she manufactured it out of coral and other material just to swoop in and save you for the final fight.
Mm-hmm.
And so you fight him, he's talking more and more and just getting super pissed off because he realizes that air is a thing that has been giving him like headaches every time he shows up to fight you because he could hear her ever so slightly and it was like a ringing in his ears. And he freaks out at the halfway point of his health, knocks out his own backup and air, and it turns into a duel, and he's just like, finally, the voices shut up. Now I can kill you. And he does a lot, because that's how this fight goes. And then All Might's just like, this was a fucking mistake. And then he's just like, God damn it. I was so jealous of you, you stupid asshole. And then he explodes. And then Coral Release happens, which is what All Mind was trying to do. And it does something, and it turns you into Coral. And spreads you across the galaxy. And then the butt rock starts playing.
And when also all the coral like goes into other armored cores and like autonomous transformers.
Yup.
So, like, Coral is, and this is where we want to talk about stretch metaphors. Coral is fossil fuels.
Yep.
And indigenous people.
Of course.
And, like, I think you have to read it as, you know, particularly thinking in terms of the Fires of Ibis, you have to read it in terms of, like, nuclear power and the dangers of nuclear power as well.
Absolutely.
I don't think one thing in a sci-fi thing can carry all of those metaphors.
Wait, I think it's more too. I think it's also AI and technological like singularities things type.
Yep.
It's like this post-human potential. Also.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, All Mind is that, and All Mind part of.
Well,
what
I think All Mind needed the coral to like become a thing. That is my. You only can guess All Mind's one.
Yeah, like All Mind clearly needs the coral to accomplish its goals.
But those goals still happen without All Mind. I'm saying so that's still like coral representing that the new form of life, the new singularity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am going to say something funny now. This reminded me of Mass Effect 3.
Yeah, how? Because I don't know what happens in that game.
So, the ending choice of Mass Effect 3 puts you in charge of pressing one of three buttons. One of them only unlocks if you've done enough of the game. One of them blows up all the bad guys, but also blows up all technology and basically fucks the entire universe. One of them, like, lets you control the bad guys and become the next big wave of bad guy. The third one, which is the one you have to work for, is because the Reapers, the bad guys in the Mass Effect trilogy, are like specifically trying to harvest biological races for good. for their good. Like they're trying to farm you for energy kind of deal. What if you just use this giant space laser to make everyone part technology?
Right. Yeah. God, I've
So
forgotten
it
how
also has
stupid that ending is.
Yes, it's
it also
dumb,
has
but
singular.
yeah, like it's dumb, but it didn't need the ending DLC, which literally just spells all this out. Like this is anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what I got with Mass Effect with this game's ending was, wow, I can't believe we became the synthetic life forms from Mass Effect 3.
It was. I'm still puzzling over it too because it has all this like political, like it has this like here we're gonna create this whatever facsimile fiction that sort of represents a lot of stuff in real life, and then
Hmm.
it's gonna do all that to have this allegory of robots rising up, and I was just like, what? What was
Yeah.
the point of the game I played
So
twice?
I can give you a charitable interpretation of it, which is that liberation will only be attained through like um establishing a way of life which respects kind of the relationship between indigeneity and nature.
Right, like
Right.
flexing the metaphor in one
Yeah.
direction because it can go in any direction. The
Yeah.
cynical read is that revolution isn't possible. We just need more technology that'll fix
Well,
it.
yeah, the cynical read is like the Elisa Yudkowsky read of like we just have to like make the supercomputer the right way so that we don't get Roko's basilisked.
Right, that too.
I was
Um,
going to bring up Roko's Basilisk because that feels like an all mine thing, especially with like this game doesn't feel like it has like time loops, but it does feel like it has time loops. Like they're fucked up time loops where new
so
things keep getting shoved in.
here,
I just
here's a
suspect the person who wrote this game read Nick Bostrom. It's just like
oh
that
god, yeah.
happened.
Here, here's a bad idea. Here's a bad idea. How many of the play loops do you think were all mind running simulations?
The first two, guaranteed.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that the third playthrough was simulated up until the point that Raven wakes up in chapter 5?
There is a distinct possibility. I don't. It's hard to that because that would explain why All Might can reference back to events that you've done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this still the game doesn't actually like come out and say it. It never wants to come out and say something like that.
Yeah.
But like if All Mine literally was Roko's basilisk, then like that does kind of pull the whole thing together.
Yeah, like I think
Yeah, it does.
honestly, you could read it as chapter 5 when you wake up after having gone through like whatever simulations they ran inside your head. They fucked up doing Roko's Basilisk. They did not gaslight you hard enough, and All Mine just fucked up, and they did not All Mine hard enough.
What's the computer in I Have No Math I'm a Scream called?
AM?
1 second. Yeah, that gone.
Yeah.
I mean, it is also sort of a riposte to that, where instead it's like, well, of course, the human can triumph over, the AI and take its rightful place as the AI. It's a very murky metaphor. I'm always like, it's very slippery. Every time I think about it, I'm thinking about something else.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of I genuinely I think there's probably real I don't know how to say this. I think I could probably forgive looking at this game and going, yeah, some part of this, well, under fucking anesthesia from All Mind was probably them trying to brainwash you. And this still feels like a coherent game because of that, but like honestly, the ending just kind of sucks. Like I'm fucking like This game is very fun. I don't think it has a coherent plot past New Game,
Mm.
and not in an interesting way like Drakengard, where like everything goes fucking wrong with that game's writing. But like, it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, they had to offer you a choice. So there's gonna be 2 playthroughs, and there's some little smattering of stuff that, like, sure, you're gonna help out the Rubicon Liberation Front. There should have been just like a Corpo, a Rubicon Liberation Front, and maybe an All Mind ending. Like, I think the way they split these things up just doesn't make sense to me.
Mm.
Because
It's very sprawling,
yeah,
and again, it comes back to that point about the approach to storytelling. Kind of, you know, it feels old fashioned in the sense that they built a bunch of cool levels and then they stretched a story on top of it, rather than like having one clear core narrative that they wanted to get at and building the levels to suit.
hmm,
Which, of course, like is the way that game design usually works because the writers aren't typically the start point of the project.
yeah. This is
Um,
also like, Sekiro aside, this is the most like clear fucking plot FromSoft has had in a fucking decade. Like,
Yeah. This is the most direct. We're gonna tell you stuff that's actually happening.
we're gonna have Metal Gear Solid cutscenes with
Yeah.
diagrams and PowerPoints. Look at these fucking graphs, baby. Look at this pie chart.
It still retains, like some of their, you could either call it trust or distrust, right? The stuff that isn't spelled out stuff. It's like, well, up to you. I don't know.
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, it's. I think actually, like, Metal Gear Solid isn't the best analogy because Kojima is so obsessed with doing cinematic storytelling, and it's not cinematic storytelling.
Yeah, I know. I just mean like
Um,
all the infographics shows in Metal Gear Solid games just make me chuckle every time because they're just like,
yeah,
we need fucking B-roll, get out the charts. And
yeah,
this game also feels like
yeah.
that, especially
It's
in these
definitely got.
interstitials. Like, ugh, good
Yeah,
grief.
actually, I think maybe here's a poll. I've been trying to think of a comparison point. The closest comparison point I can think of for how this game handles its storytelling is Metal Wolf Chaos.
What a shocker! The other
I haven't
FromSoft
played
mecha
that,
game.
but so how?
Because Metal Wolf Chaos does most of its storytelling in the mission briefings and then in um what's his name, the vice president shouting at you mid mission.
Amazing. So I mean that they probably then modeled their storytelling I'm assuming off of Armored Core. Then this is
Yeah, like I, I I know that I've played like in the 90s I played a bunch of games that worked like this where you have the level and at the start of the level there's a little like soldier your mission is to X and at the end of the level there's a soldier well done for doing X.
right. Command and Conquer can feel like that. It's also
Every
kind of
Yeah,
like
RTS.
it's
yeah,
very
RTS.
it's a very satirical game, taking a satirical stance on Desert Storm and stuff. Like it's actually
Yeah.
I think it's a
Like
pretty decent story for that time period for that subject matter.
I
But
think
yes,
it survived longest in RTS. I think maybe some like Contra or Bionic Commando games worked like this as well. I'm thinking like
Like Metal
platformer
Slug
games. Yeah, quite possibly.
is
Like
very
they
arcadey. Like,
yeah.
it feels to be like you can't interrupt the gameplay with stuff. So you need to have like the stuff between be like, okay, context, and then play the game, play the
Mm,
quarter muncher.
yeah. Um. Anyway, yeah. So,
This game is dumb, and I love it, and I love beating up robots. That's my take.
mm,
I'm like 5 pages deep into writing about the because it just like it's boggling. My mind's boggling.
Yeah. Okay, we can take out the spoiler warning. Oop.
um.
I don't know that we have a whole lot to say. Are there any questions from the peanut gallery? And yeah, Wargame is probably also Wargaming as a seed point would probably be like, yeah, if you got sudden events in RTSs and other 90s games, you're probably going to get them contextualized after the fact.
Yeah, I guess also like I haven't played enough kind of COD type games to know to what extent they do this, but it might also linger in like the mission structure of military sims.
It is 100% just. I was just playing a different Battlefield game. Now I have to talk about this, but I was playing Battlefield 2, but the console version. I think it's called Modern Combat or something very dumb. And it has mission briefings where they tell you what's going on. Then it has these interesting cutscenes that show the news. It shows U.S. news and the Chinese news, like having takes on it that are not what you just did. But it's all told through these briefings.
Yeah.
Do the encounter.
I'm also thinking about like Armo players do this. Like all the like to this day, you are going to get the plot from before and after the actual like planned operations and stuff. Like I think this is just like maybe just a military thing.
It might be.
Armored Core 6 feels more like a milsim than it does a mech game. 100%.
Yeah. That's I can agree with that.
That might be a good way of like summarizing the thing I've been trying to say for 2 hours.
Let's go. We got there eventually.
Yeah.
And another thing that I was thinking about, so you might be thinking, okay, so like, why are we talking about a milsim in an RPG podcast? And the answer is
not talk about this as an RPG at all.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like RPG, we really need to like come up with some sort of like rubric for like why we talk about things as RPGs, because I think we've discussed it over the years that we've been doing this. Oh god, 8 years since we started this nonsense. Like personally, I've kind of come to view like RPG as like a how thin is the line between what you're allowed to see and like just the numbers of a game.
Yeah.
And this has a lot of that, but I still feel like it's not quite RPG-y, but it is.
I was actually surprised at I hate this word, but I use it because whenever I use this, at the sense of progression. Because although you know it's not in one direction, right? You don't just get solidly stronger or able to take more hits. You can get these like these negotiated gains, like fucking Borderlands, I guess, where your guns have a drawback, but they also have a draw on it, and the drawbacks get better, like whatever. They're not as bad, and then the benefit gets better over time. So you have it is onwards and upwards when you play through all the new game pluses as more and more parts come online.
You do steadily find like just straight up better upgrades.
Yeah,
there's the CPU chip thing where you can just go, I would like 5% more explosion damage, please.
Yeah, also the OS tuning is just like will
transparent
have
skill tree.
Yes. It's like it's really, really fascinating because I felt like I had this problem with this game, the same as like I would with a DMC. Like DMC 3, when I played it for the first time, Devil May Cry 3, there's an early boss, the Cerberus, who will just kick your ass if you're not ready for it. And like, he's just kind of hard. But it's because they expect you to be playing through like the same stuff with more tools that you get from the rest of the game. So your toolbox is just lacking to deal with certain stuff early on. And the hardest parts of these games are always early on when you don't have your full toolkit. And that's true of this game too. Because like New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus don't add stats to enemies. Like all of the enemies take the same amount of damage and do the same amount of damage and have the same amount of health throughout the entire fucking 3 playthrough set of loops.
And when you
And
have the better thing, you just really feel you're just tearing through them.
yeah, like you have better weapons, you have a better selection of weapons, so you could fine tune what you need for different missions. You would just have straight up OS upgrades, which make all of your numbers slightly better, and you feel those because everything is just
Don't you ever?
like, and the fact that there's a respec is good. I wish it was more obvious because like having to inform Leroy that there was a respec felt
Oh yeah,
silly.
that was another reason why I talked about the sunk cost. I didn't know I could respec though. There's a lot of things in this game they're just like, yeah, you could do it, but we're not gonna tell you. Figure it out.
Also, so like, there's a trade-off between getting the like OS tuning kind of power up extra abilities like the kick, and just straight stat upgrades, right?
Yeah, the thing is with the flat, like the one and done abilities, is they're usually cheap, and the like the OS, like the number go up bonuses usually cost significantly more.
The bigger
They do.
trade-off with your expansion cores.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I've actually when I was looking at the game again, the best option is just number go up, of course. But technically, you could do the other ones.
Yeah.
Well, you got to get the kick somehow.
Yeah,
You do
I
gotta
did
get
not
the
get
kick.
I did not get the kick.
I almost never did it, but like everyone.
I love to drop kick a motherfucker. Like the thing is, reverse joint legs, there are like 3 fucking pairs of those legs in the game. I picked one that was like, this lets me be heavyweight, but I'm gonna stick to midweight. And reverse joint makes your fucking kicks stronger. So I was just like, holy shit, I'm gonna drop kick everything I see. So I did, and it worked.
Yeah, I mean the kick did look really fun, but also there was no way I was ever going to be effective with it. No way in hell was I ever going to be effective with it in the way that you were.
Yeah. A lot of time playing Zelda has very properly prepared me for how you need to basically process your movement in polar coordinates when you're targeted on an enemy, and I really got used to it. And between that and the swords and the stun needle, that was fun. The game is fun if you have the capacity for it, and if you don't, I can't blame you.
It will break you.
I'm gonna be a hater. There's too much stuff. Who's gonna use all that stuff? It's ridiculous. Yeah,
Armored Core players.
It's like it's tuned for like 1% of the people who play this game.
Yeah,
Which I mean,
That
great.
is
They can
kind
have
of a
fun.
FromSoft thing, Elden Ring notwithstanding.
Yeah, true.
Like there are so many different like Dark Souls challenge runs for using like different specific builds.
They do it in a more sustainable way than the Gacha Life Service game, but they kind of make a game that they want you to play for like a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And make content of you playing to advertise it for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it was FromSoft has been producing these for a while, longer than they've been producing like Demon Souls, Dark Souls, etc. The Souls likes. The tied with like Kingsfield, like it's old FromSoft. And it's just fascinating to get to see this fucking game that has like it's clearly pulling from older stuff than Dark Souls, but also it's really pulling from Soulsborne / Sekiro. Like, I'm gonna play Sekiro. It's on my fucking bingo. I'm going to play it, but it's daunting. That game's daunting too.
Sekiro filtered me. I'll just admit this on the cast. It's a safe space. I got mad and quit and never played it again.
Yeah. Like, no, straight up, like, I took like 4 or 5 hours to beat Balteus. Like, I genuinely needed to get unfiltered because that fucking fight is a really hard first wall.
It super is.
Even
it wasn't the first fight I got walled on.
I mean, I also kind of got walled on the starter helicopter.
So you know, I'm offline because I'm a nerd, and so I didn't know any of this stuff, and I was freaking out at the helicopter because I'm like, it's the first mission. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
FromSoft's bullshit. They just start like they didn't even give me a chance to play the game. They're just like, no, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Yeah, like honestly, it's I'm going to say this again in audio. Someone else's pants syndrome is the worst fucking thing, and that's when you have to fucking play using a loadout you're not fucking used to. You're playing
Yeah,
playing with someone else's pants on. You gotta break them fuckers in before you can feel even a little bit comfortable. And it's just like,
that's the other problem with the like, hey, you should change your build every mission kind of advice. Is like you build up muscle memory, right? Muscle memory is a thing, more so for some people than others. I'm a very muscle memory gamer. If I change my build, the muscle memory's all wrong, and I press the wrong buttons.
No,
You know,
I actually had that same problem. For a long
I
time, I
yeah.
couldn't even use the charge rifle because I would just hold it down at the wrong or forget that it's forget that it's a click to fire. There is just too many things to remember. I was challenged. I struggled.
Yeah, no,
That's
like
another reason why I stuck to the same builds because I'm like, I'm not gonna remember what this new thing I just put on does.
unfortunately my brain just works like it like like Doll says. Like I would need like one or two attempts on or like a warm up thing in the training range to get used to stuff, and that is basically it. That's because I'm a stupid
For me,
bitch.
it's the asymmetry. The asymmetry would get me really bad. If I had the same, like if I picked two of the same
If you had
guns
a
to do the
dual
same thing,
trigger build.
right? I actually I never make a mistake. But if I have two different shoulder weapons, two different hand weapons, I can't play. I
Yeah, no,
literally can't play anymore.
I
my
started
first my first build was that I had like missiles and plasma and a rifle and a sword, and I knew which button was which. And then as soon as I started changing parts of that out for other things, I was like trying to use a grenade launcher like it was my missiles and stuff.
Yeah, I was doing this
yeah,
pretty much.
the thing is, like, I never, except for Balteus, which I really needed the plasma for, like, I never went for two of the same thing, except for, like, the one time I did the, like, I'm gonna fucking isekai trek these motherfuckers because I'm tired of fighting them legitimately, and I have two stun needles and two bazookas. Let's go.
I
Um,
don't know if this is related, but I'm like extremely bad at task switching and multitasking. I'm just not very good at
I'm
those things.
extremely good, which is,
And I
yeah.
feel like you're just constantly doing that in Armored Core, and it's just fucking.
Yeah, no,
Mm.
like I'm pretty sure if Becky was behind me while I was trying to play some of these boss fights, she would have a fucking stroke. Like the way I play. Like you've watched me stream this. I do some
Mhm.
shit that's just like,
I can't fucking tell what's going on in half your videos if you
yeah.
play in this game.
And meanwhile, I'm just
Uh,
like, oh, that was so good. I did so good
like,
at that.
or rather, like I can see an attack hit and backfill what must have led up to the attack hitting,
Mhm.
but I can't understand the sequence of play until the end of it.
Yeah.
I also used terminal armor the whole time just so I had one less button because I was forgetting to use it. I'm just like, if I'm not using it, then let me use the one that uses itself, and then so I got
Yeah.
used to using that.
Wait,
Until
which one? Sorry,
that one's the one that gives you a shield once you hit one.
Expansion thing, terminal armor. Yeah, is when you die, you just put up a
I
big
had terminal
shield.
armor. That was the only
Yes.
one.
It's I had to use it on well, I tried it on Snail. I ended up going for the shield on Snail and then like assault armor the rest of the way because I was just like, "Oh, you mean to tell me that when I dive kick someone, I can then annihilate their stagger? Let's
At
go."
the at the
Yeah.
very least, from using the noob armor all game, I realized that if you just stand next to the boss, it messes up their attack patterns, and I got some like sick victories out of the jaws of death.
Yeah.
There were multiple fights that I finished at 1 HP
Same.
because the assault armor had saved me.
The
Had
terminal
given
armor.
Yeah.
me just enough to get me over the line.
Yeah, me
Uh,
too.
But
Yeah, no,
I
I know.
also had a problem getting one shot in fights all. It was I leaned
Good
on it.
grief. Ah,
I just to circle back round to the is it an RPG question or not? You can tell it's an RPG because I very much preferred the levels to the boss fights, and
that's
that's in general.
literally
Well,
any game.
you know how it's a given Dark Souls is an RPG, but I'm like less invested in my build than Dark Souls than I am in. Like I am done. My character is done. Like I don't know, hour 8. I'm like, yeah, that's it. No more. I don't. My stats don't matter. My items don't matter. I'm done. Like
Hmm.
your numerical upgrades in Dark Souls aren't even that impactful because it's kind of tabletop. So it's like less in line with the video game conception of RPG, anyways. Whereas, yeah, in Armored Core, I'm actually exploring more options, and my character changes in more impactful ways than it does in Pixels.
Oh, hey, look, meaningful choices in a video game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, is that a good note to finish on?
I think this is as good a note as any to finish on. We have been going for like nearly 2.5 hours. Thanks for coming, everybody. This has been Live Genre Chronicles. Over the next couple months, we will be working on Caligula Effect 2, which is an RPG that I tried to play the first one. It gives me bad vibes.
I think bad vibes is fair. That it has the vibes are fucked. That's the game.
Yeah, we have heard our entire chat is, oh, good luck.
Yeah, some people that we know have been vigorously enthusiastic about these games, and our limited brushes with them to date have left us questioning those people.
Yeah, some people are specifically like, no, Caligula Effect 2 is the good one. Please don't play the first one. Other people have been like, they're both good. Play the first one. We're not going to do that. I'm going to do that on my own time, but I'm not going to... I got like 2 hours in. It was like 80% the same song. And also then they started being fat phobic. So that was cool.
Well, we'll soldier on, and sometime early in January, we will tell you our thoughts on it.
Yep. And then after that,
we
we have plans in order. After that, we will be tackling Final Fantasy VII Remake. So we will be able to cover that in time for part 2, which is Rebirth.
Yeah.
I feel that's correct.
It might be Rebirth. I forget. It might be Rebirth or it might be Reunion. Anyway, one way that our aim is to record our Final Fantasy VII Remake Episode 1 episode like the weekend before Episode 2 releases.
So the last weekend in February.
Yeah.
So if you want to be ready for that, pick up some FF7R on holiday sale. That's an option. Anyway, thanks for coming by, everybody. I hope you had a lovely time, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.